Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for our first official daily dose of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate spoilers. So we just kicked off spoiler season today, and we have a ridiculous amount of cards. Seriously, Wizards spoiled like half the set. We have a huge number of cards to talk about. Really sweet stuff, new legends, like a million of them, new mechanics, mythics, just craziness going on, which means we should probably jump right into it, start talking new cards. Before we do, 3 quick reminders. First, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. It is a commander set, so it's not legal in Standard, or Modern, or Pioneer. It's kind of coming to Magic Arena in some form. We don't really have details yet, so keep that in mind. Our focus today going to be on the Commander format, because the cards aren't legal in other places. Also, if you need some Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate cards, you can get them from our awesome sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish. And if you want to keep up on the latest spoilers, you'll find them all over at mtgpreviews.com. Anyway, buckle up, everyone. It's gonna be a long one. Let's talk Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. Alright, so we gotta start things off with this crazy new mechanic, Background, which is kind of the foundation of this whole set, which gonna have a huge impact on Commander Legends 2 Limited and probably in Commander itself. So we can see an example of this in Raised by Giants, a 6-mana legendary background enchantment that says commander creatures you own have base power and toughness of 10/10 and are giants in addition to their other types. So when you first read this, you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. It's an expensive enchantment. It's gonna make my commander a little bit bigger. That's nice. But we actually have a whole bunch of these, going from common all the way up to rare, various power levels. So there's a whole bunch of these background enchantments, and kind of the same thing. You're like, okay, they all benefit my commander in some way, give it some ability, but it's actually way more than this. We also have a bunch of new legend, and I'm sure there's more to come. This is a choose a background, and this essentially lets you play partners. If you remember playing with partners in Commander, this really does the same thing, except your partner's going to be an enchantment. If you have a choose a background commander, like Volo up there, you're going to have Volo in your command zone, but you're also going to be able to choose any one of these backgrounds that you want, and this is also going to change the color identity of your commander. So when you're building Volo, you're going to be able to choose. Do you want to be mono blue? Sure, you can just play Volo. Do you want to be Simic Volo? Well, then play Raised by Giants. Do you want to be Black Volo or Dimir Volo? Then you can play Cultist of the Absolute, or Is It Volo? You can play Guild Artisan. So you can play any color combination you want. So far, we've only seen monocolored backgrounds. We don't know if there's going to be 2-color ones or 5-color ones. We'll have to wait and see as we see more of the set. But so far, you're going to be able to build any 2-color pairing with any choose a background partner thanks to these background enchantments, and I think that's the main value of these cards. The way these cards are fine, and they do benefit your commander, none of them are super push, like Raised by Giants. Turning your commander into a 10/10 base power and toughness for 6 mana is kind of a lot. The power of it is twofold, though. First, you get to take your Volo and be a Simic deck rather than a mono blue deck, which is really strong. Second, it's kind of free value because it's going to be in your command zone. So you're going to be starting with it in hand essentially every single game, kind of like a companion. So really think of these cards as a new take on partner. I would say probably not as strong as original partners. Having 2 actual commanders in your command zone, really strong. Plus a lot of those were multicolored, so you'd have like 4-color decks, which is also really powerful. You just get access to so much stuff. So I don't think this new background mechanic is quite going to be as broken as partner was. However, I do think it's probably more powerful than partner with, because partner with, you don't get any flexibility. You can only play 2 specific cards. You get the upside of having 2 commanders, but there's no mixing and matching and changing your colors. So we're gonna have to wait and see, but definitely something to keep in mind. We got a lot of these new choose a background commanders and a lot of backgrounds and more yet to come. So it's really gonna add a whole new element to deck building in Commander, and also probably be really interesting in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate Limited. Anyway, let's talk about some of these choose a background commanders. We had to talk about the background first, because as we talk about a card like Volo, I think it's important to note that even though it's a mono blue card, really it can be any 2-color combination because of those backgrounds, which greatly changes its power level. Like if Volo Itinerant Scholar was just mono blue, it would be much weaker than being a Simic commander, or if you choose a Is It commander, or Dimir commander, or Azorius commander, whatever you feel like thanks to those backgrounds. So Volo, 3 mana 2/3 legendary human wizard, says when it enters a battlefield, create Volo's Journal, a legendary colorless colorless artifact token with hexproof, and whenever you cast a creature spell, note one of its creature types that hasn't been noted for this artifact yet. So you cast an insect, you get a name on it. You cast a bear, you get another name on it. It keeps adding up. Then you can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card for each creature type noted for target permanent you control named Volo's Journal. So one quick thing to mention before I talk more about this card, Volo's Journal can be destroyed. It has hexproof, so it has a bit of protection, but if your opponent casts a Shatter Storm or something, a Farewell, you can lose your journal and everything that's built up on it. So it's not like an emblem that's going to be 100% safe. It won't get hit by targeted removal, but that still doesn't mean it cannot die. So this kind of is reminiscent of original Volo. They both care about the same things. They want you to play a deck that has a bunch of different creature types. Original Volo just made copies of the creatures as long as you didn't have that type already. New Volo gonna draw a bunch of cards, so they do care about the same things. If you're playing Volo Guide to Monsters, I expect you'll play new Volo in your deck as well. So if you're building this deck, pretty much it's a deck building challenge. You want to play 1 or 2 copies of a whole bunch of different creature types rather than a whole bunch of copies as one creature type. It's a menagerie deck. It's the opposite of a tribal deck, essentially. So that's what Volo's going to reward you for. One note is, it doesn't work as well as original Volo with shapeshifters. The main trick with original Volo is you could cast shapeshifters. On the stack, they're a shapeshifter, so they trigger Volo, but on the battlefield, they're going to be whatever creature type they copy, so then your next shapeshifter would still get copied by Volo, New Volo doesn't really care. Once you have shapeshifter on Volo's Journal, your next shapeshifter is not going to add another shapeshifter because you can only have each name once, so it doesn't work as well with clones as old Volo. So if you want to play a whole bunch of different creature types, Volo Itinerant Scholar, nice source of card advantage from your command zone. Speaking of background commanders, we also got Lae'zel Vlaakith Champion, a 3-mana 3/3 Gith Warrior. This says, if you would put 1 or more counters on a creature or planeswalker you control, or on yourself, put that many +1 of those kind of counters on the permanent in player instead. Also choose a background, so even though it's mono white, can be any color combination based on whatever background you choose. So Lae'zel is kind of like a peer, actually very, very similar to peer, a little bit like a winding constrictor in your command zone. Adding extra counters to things, pretty fun. So as far as adding counters to yourself, that's the one unique part of Lae'zel compared to something like Pure Imaginative Rascal or Winding Constrictor. It doesn't really do a whole lot. I think there's only 3 counters that go on the player that I can think of. Experience counters, where Lae'zel is actually kind of beneficial. Getting more experience counters is a good thing. Energy counters, so this doubles up your energy or adds an extra energy with stuff like Aetherworks Marvel. And then infect counters, which do go on the player, but you don't really want to add extra infect counters on yourself. That's actually a downside. So at this point, I don't think the yourself part of Lae'zel, the most unique part, actually does a whole lot in most decks. Maybe you could build an experience counter or energy deck, but really that's not the main payoff. I think what this is mostly going to do is add counters to permanents, like planeswalkers. This is a great way to get more loyalty and ultimate your planeswalkers quickly. Something like Nissa Vital Force. You can actually emblem the turn it comes into play. It comes in with 5 loyalty. You get +1 from Lae'zel, so you get up to 6 loyalty, then you emblem it, and then landfall. Every time a land comes into play, you get to draw a card really, really strong if you can do that right away. The other place that Lae'zel can shine is in the 99 of other counter decks. If you're playing Hamez or Falco or Yachimaru, then Lae'zel's going to be great in the 99, just giving you extra counters. And remember, this doesn't just say like +1/+1 counters. It does work with Hamez's +1/+1 counters, but it's also going to give you more shield counters with Falco if you're heading that direction or whatever. So that's another place to take advantage of this. So interesting as your commander, especially in some sort of Super Friend style deck or +1/+1 counter style deck, and also really nice in the 99 and other counter decks. We also got Gale Waterdeep Prodigy, another background commander, 3-mana 1/3 human wizard that says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast up to 1 target card of the other type from your graveyard. If a spell cast from your graveyard this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. And then again, mono blue, but you can be any 2-color pair thanks to the background thing. So Gale's kind of interesting. I don't think there's really many tricks here. It's just like a spell slinger commander. You cast an instant, you can cast a sorcery from your graveyard. You cast a sorcery, you can cast an instant from your graveyard. Important to note that you still have to pay the cost. You don't get to cast it for free. So it's not like you can cast a brainstorm and get a free world fire from your graveyard. You can cast a brainstorm and cast a world fire from your graveyard, but you're gonna have to spend the mana. The one trick I could find for building around Gale is actually buyback spells. So buyback spells go back to your hand when they resolve if you pay the buyback that cost. So the trick here is, if you read Gale carefully, it says if a spell cast from your graveyard this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So if you buy back a Capsize or a Walk the Eons or a Forbid from your graveyard, it's not going to go back to the graveyard. It's going to go back into your hand. So then you can kind of keep looping this. You can cast a Forbid and then cast a Forbid from your graveyard with the Gale ability. And then if you buy back it goes back to your hand. So you can cast it again. It'll be in the graveyard to do it again. The other trick with Gale is it just breaks the timing restriction. If you cast an instant during your opponent's turn, you should be able to cast one of your sorceries from your graveyard during your opponent's turn as well. So that's kind of a nice synergy, but really, I think it's kind of just a generic spell slinger style commander, or something that can show up in the 99 as spell slinger decks as well, where you get that Snapcaster reusing your graveyard effect. So those are the background commanders, and there's a bunch of uncommon ones. I'm sure there's more to come, but that's a nice overview of what we've seen so far. We also got a bunch of normal commanders, including my favorite new legend from the set so far, in Myrkul, Lord of Bones, a 6-mana, 7/5 legendary god, which, as long as your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, is indestructible. And then it says, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an enchantment and loses all other card types. So you get this down, you have a creature, that creature dies, it comes back as a non-creature enchantment. It'll still have all of its abilities and everything. It'll just be an enchantment instead of a creature. And I love this card because it's doing something we've never seen before. We've never had a way to have a creature die and come back as an enchantment, or turn a creature into enchantment that efficiently again and again and again. So I'm really hyped to brew around this. I'm not sure the best thing to do with it exactly, but it seems like a really cool build around. So one of the exciting aspects of this is Abzan doesn't really have a good Enchantress commander. Right now, if you look in EDH Rec, the most popular Abzan enchantment commanders are like Tiama and Offensa, stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with enchantments. So Myrkul, even without its really cool ability, gives us an Abzan Enchantress commander. So if you want to play a bunch of Enchantress stuff, this is a good thing to play in those color combinations. As far as its abilities, when you think about what this does, let's say you got a Llanowar Elves and it dies, you're going to get an enchantment Llanowar Elves. It's not going to be a creature, but the enchantment is still going to be able to tap to add a mana. Or you have a Duthi Voidwalker that you sacrifice. That's going to go to the graveyard, and then it's going to come back, and you're going to have an enchantment Duthi Voidwalker. It's still going to exile your opponent's graveyard. You can still tap it and sacrifice it to cast a card with a void counter on it, but it's not going to be a creature, so it won't get hit by creature removal. You're going to have an enchantment version of Mother of Runes. It'll still protect your stuff, but not be a creature, which is just super, super cool. Like, even just think of the Duthi Voidwalker synergy. You play it, some stuff gets exiled, then you sack it, cast a thing for free, then it comes back as an enchantment, then you can sack it and cast another thing for free. Even just that is really, really strong. And then you get all these cool synergies with enchantments, like Constellation. The creatures coming back from the graveyard are enchantments, so that's an enchantment entering the battlefield, so that's going to trigger your Archon of Sun's Grace to make a Pegasus, or your Eidolon of Blossoms to draw cards, or Doomwake Giants to wrath away your opponent's board. And then there's infinite combos. I know everything goes infinite with Devoted Druid, but this is another infinite combo piece for Devoted Druid. Devoted Druid, 2-drop 0/2 that taps out a green mana, but you can put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it. So the trick here is, if we get an enchantment version of Devoted Druid, we can just tap it and untap it as many times as we want. We still got to put the -1/-1 counter on it, but an enchantment can have infinite -1/-1 counters on it without dying. It just doesn't care. So this gives us infinite mana. You can also prevent infinite damage with Barrington Medic. Like, if you got them both, you're never gonna die. Cinderhaze Witch just cleans away everyone's hand, makes a player discard, untap it, make a player discard, do it as many times as you want to. So I think that's a really interesting build around, although it's worth pointing out there's not that many of these cards. I think these 3 cards are the only cards in all of Magic that pull off this combo, that have this ability. Also kind of cute with stuff like Platinum Angel. We got to see in Standard, like turning Faceless Haven into a Platinum Angel be really, really powerful, to the point where Faceless Haven's banned now, not specifically because of that synergy with Book of Exalted Deeds, but it is banned now, in part because of that. Well, you can kind of do something similar with Myrkul and like Platinum Angel. You play your Platinum Angel, it dies, it's going to come back as an enchantment. An enchantment is not as hard to kill as a land, but it's much harder to kill than a creature, especially if you build around it with like Sterling Groves. So you can get this enchantment with Platinum Angel's ability that's going to be really, really hard for players to deal with. And then if you want to go really deep, you can turn your creatures back into creatures after their enchantments with stuff like Starfield Nyx or Opalescence, enchantments, which turns enchantments into creatures, which is kind of hilarious. There's no infinite combo here, because remember, Myrkul only works with non-token creatures. So you have a creature die, it gets exiled, you get a token copy of it, you can turn that token copy back into a creature with Starfield or Opal Essence, but then when that dies, it's just gone forever because it's a token. But that's still another sweet synergy where you can kind of rebuild your board. So Myrkul, I absolutely love this card. I'm sure there's tons of other cool synergies, but this is just my favorite card from the set so far. It's got the brewing juices flowing, so if you got some ideas on how to build a really sweet deck around this, this is in the lead so far for me for the first deck I'm gonna build from Commander Legends 2. We also got a new Planeswalker that can be legal as your commander, and a card that people have been wanting ever since Adventures in the Forgotten Realms came out, which is Elminster. So Elminster was a card that after AFR came out a year ago, the one card people complained about not showing up was this one. Everyone wanted to know, where's Elminster? Where's Elminster? That's one of the biggest characters in D&D. We need to have this card. Well, we got it now. It took an extra year, and it's a pretty sweet one. It's a 5 mana, 5 loyalty planeswalker that can be your commander. It has a static ability that says, whenever you scry, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn costs X generic less to cast, where X is the number of cards you looked at while scrying this way. So if you scry 2, your next instant or sorcery, you're going to cost 2 less, plus 2, draw a card, and then scry 2. So that scry 2 also going to give you 2 mana discount on the next thing that you take and cast, if it's an instant or sorcery. And then -3, exile the top card of your library, create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens with flying equal to that card's mana value. So I actually really love this card as a planeswalker that can be your commander. One of the problems with planeswalkers that can be your commanders is they die really easily. You play them and your opponent's just going to kill them before it gets back around to you. Well, Elminster actually kind of solves this problem, especially in a scry deck. If you can get something big on the top of your deck, you can play this -3 and make a ton of 1/1 flyers, enough that you can hopefully block and keep Elminster alive, and then the next turn you can start plussing and scrying and ramping with your scry ability. So I think this card's pretty neat. We haven't seen a lot of Scry Matters cards. The only other one I can find is Elgith, which turns your scry into card draw. I'd probably play that with Elminster, although a little awkward that because it turns your scry into card draw, you're not going to see the cards with your scry, so you're not going to get the ramp ability from Elminster. But I think that Elminster, it really likes spells that draw you cards in scry, like Gravenlore, the Diviner's Portent, Ugin's Insight. Think about like Gravenlore, for example. Gravenlore, you can cast it, you can do some scrying, you can draw some cards, and then you're also going to get a big discount on your next spell. So you can chain that into an Ugin's Insight and do some more scrying and draw some more cards and kind of have this big card advantage storm style turn almost. The other way you can take advantage of Elminster is stuff that controls the top of your deck. Think Eureka almost, where you can use Scroll Rack and Sensei's Defining Top to stack really expensive stuff on the top of your deck, and then -3 to make a ton of flyers, and you can just play big expensive spells like Aminatu's Augury. You can also take advantage of split cards. One of the tricks here is split cards like Commit to Memory. They actually have a mana value that is their combined mana cost. So Commit you can cast for 4 mana, Memory you can cast for 6 mana, but as far as Elminster is concerned, on the top of your deck, it's 10 mana value, or Dust Dawn, gonna be 9 mana value. So these are cards that'll give you a ton of flyers to protect your Elminster, and I think that's the direction you go with this. Play the big spells, Aminatu's Augury, because Elminster can help you ramp into them, and they're also good on the top of your deck. Play some split cards. Another direction, maybe Miracles. Miracles like being on the top of your deck. Elminster is going to help you find them. They're really expensive, so they can make a ton of flyers, but then they also are going to be able to be cast at a cheaper cost if you can get them on the top of your deck, so they work with the Scroll Racks and the Scry ability. So that's another sweet way to play this. So Elminster, it's a pretty sweet planeswalker as your commander. Maybe one of my favorites so far. Kind of Scry Matters-y, but you can also just play it as a generic Spellslinger style deck because it's pretty self-contained. Like, it scries itself and then it ramps your spells, and then you play these big spells that you're ramping into that can make a bunch of fairies to either kill your opponent or protect Elminster. So I really like how it snowballs with itself. So really sweet new design for a planeswalker that can be your commander. Speaking of planeswalkers that can be your commander, we got another good one in Tasha the Witch Queen, known primarily for her very hideous laugh. So Tasha, 5 mana, Dimir Planeswalker, could be your commander for loyalty, has a static of whenever you cast a spell you don't own, create a 3/3 black demon creature token, +1, draw a card. For each opponent, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from the player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. -3, you may cast a spell from among the cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. So Tasha, it's a really fun card, although I do have a bit of a concern with this one, which is it doesn't protect itself very easily. We were talking about with Elminster how those fairies it can make really good at playing defense and keeping it alive. Tasha, I think you're going to need to cast it twice to get value out of it. I think how this is mostly going to play is you play Tasha, you tick it up, you draw a card, you exile the best spells from each opponent's graveyard, then your opponents are going to be like, I don't really want you to cast these spells for free, I better kill the Tasha. So your opponents are going to kill the Tasha before it gets back around the table to you, and then you're going to have to play Tasha again, but remember, those cards are still exiled with page counters, so then you can -3 and cast one of those spells right away. I guess, in theory, you could protect it if somehow you have spells you don't own that you can cast the same turn that you play Tasha to make some 3/3s, but I think that's mostly how it's going to play out. So Tasha, as I mentioned before, we've seen references to her before, from Tasha's Hideous Laughter. That's the one other Tasha card in Magic. It kind of plays like Diluvian Primordial. Diluvian Primordial, over the course of 2 turns, maybe Diluvian Primordial would suspend, and it only gets 1 spell at a time. Diluvian Primordial, oh my god, for 7 mana, it just gets all the spells. But the upside of Tasha is you can play it as your commander, which is kind of neat. So I think this is mostly a Dimir Theft style commander, kind of reminiscent of something like Xanathar, where you just want to play as many things as possible that can steal your opponent's cards, not just instants or sorceries, although instants and sorceries work really well with Tasha because it cares about instants and sorceries in your opponent's graveyard, but any spell you cast, even creature spells that you don't own, are going to make those demons and make a big board. So here you're playing Thief of Sanities and Gonties and King Narfi Betrayal and Siphon Insight, and you're trying to steal a bunch of your opponent's stuff, play Tasha, cast your opponent's spells to make some demons, and then use Tasha to cast more spells for free and make more demons, which is just a really fun play pattern. I love these theft decks in Commander. So Tasha, I don't think she's super strong. As I mentioned, I think she's going to die a lot. I think that's a problem. I think it's going to be, 5 + 7, so 12 mana to cast 1 spell for free, which compared to something like Diluvian Primordial isn't really competitive. On the other hand, if you just like stealing your opponent's spells, or you like Tasha for her hideous laugh, then this is just a really cool theft style commander to build around. Moving on through the world of new legends, we got Jon Irenicus, Shattered One, a 4 mana 3/3 Dimir Elf Wizard, interesting creature type, says at the beginning of your end step, target opponent gains control of up to 1 target creature you control. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on it and tap it. It's goaded for the rest of the game and gains this creature can't be sacrificed. So goading, it has to attack, but it can't attack you. And then it says whenever a creature you own but don't control attacks, you draw a card. So this is like a weird Dimir Zedru almost, where you give your opponent stuff, but then you get card advantage thanks to giving your opponent stuff. But this is an interesting twist because you're giving only creatures, and those creatures are goaded so they have to attack. It's much more aggressive. It's actually going to end the game because your opponent's going to be attacking with the creatures that you give them. And this is another card that just seems really fun to build around. I think the easiest way to build around Jon is just play things that are a negative once they're on the battlefield, like Abyssal Persecutor. It's got a really big body, 4 mana 6/6, but it says you can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game. So you can play Abyssal Persecutor and then give it to an opponent. With Jon, you're going to draw cards as your opponent attacks with it, and it has to attack because it's goaded, and whoever you give it to literally can't win the game. Also, there's all kinds of stuff. Phyrexian Negators, Desecration Elemental, Steel Golem. You can't play artifact or creature spells. Plague Reaver, going to make your opponent lose all the creatures that you don't give them, sacrifice away their board. Hellcarver Demon, it's goaded, so it has to attack, so your opponent's going to hit, and they're going to have to sacrifice all their permanents, except the ones you give them with Jon, because they can't be sacrificed, and then try to cast the stuff off the top of your deck. I tried this on Commander Clash recently. It did not work. Hellcarver Demon is so risky. So there's so many of these negative things you can give your opponent that's going to be really hilarious, and you're going to keep drawing more of them, because that's what Jon's ability does. You might be wondering about that no sacrifice clause, and we were talking talking about it a little bit with some of these cards, Desecration Elemental, Hellcarver Demon, but I think the idea here is you can use this to give your opponent massive demons, like Devouring Strassus, Xanthra Demon, Lord of the Pit. These are creatures that are kind of hilarious to give your opponent. They're massive, they're flying, they're trampling, they're going to deal a ton of damage when they're goaded. The problem is they have the downside that they have to sacrifice something or deal a bunch of damage to themselves or whatever, deal a bunch of damage to you. So if you gave your opponent a Devouring Strassus, your opponent would just sacrifice it, most likely, to its own ability at the first chance that they got, but Jon doesn't allow that to happen, so you're free to give your opponent these massive drawback demons. Your opponent isn't even going to have the option to sacrifice them, so they're going to find themselves in all kinds of trouble. They're going to be taking tons of damage, they're going to be smashing each other for tons of damage, which sounds really, really sweet. The other trick here is you can do some weird things by temporarily stealing creatures if you get the triggers right. Like, for example, Old Man in the Sea. Old Man in the Sea essentially taps to steal a creature, but then it has to stay tapped, so you can't just keep doing it again and again and again. Well, the trick here is you can tap Old Man in the Sea to steal a creature, then on your end step, you can give that creature, the stolen creature, back to one of your opponents, and then you can untap your Old Man in the Sea and do it again. Same with Beguiler of Wills, or you can even use Ray of Command, which is kind of like a blue threaten to steal a creature, steal the creature, smash them with it, end step, before Ray of Command wears off and gives a creature back, give it away with Jon, and you can do this to make sure your opponent's commander can't attack you. For example, steal a commander for a turn, goad it for the rest of the game, and then you know it's not going to hit me. I'm safe from commander damage for the rest of the game from that commander. So there's all kinds of shenanigans with Jon, and I really love this card. Seems really fun to build around. We also got Astarion the Decadent, a 6-mana 4/4 vampire elf rogue with Death Touch and lifelink. This is a beginning or end step, choose one, feed, target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn, or friends, the one I pick with Tomer every time, you gain life equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. So Astarion, it's a fine life gain commander. If you want to play Orzhov life gain, something like Karlov or Lisa, this is a fine option. It's got lifelink. It can double up your lifelink from anything you're gaining with the Friends ability. It also has plenty of shenanigans if you want to play Sanguine Bonds and Exquisite Bloods and Vetoes and try to do the like I gain life, you lose life style combo. Seems like the perfect commander for that. But speaking of combos, I think the best way to play this card is try to just one-shot people with it. That feed ability, target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn, is really scary with cards that make someone lose half their life. Like, maybe the best is Revival Revenge or maybe Blood Tribute. They're both about the same, but for 6 mana, they're going to make someone lose half their life. So you cast this during your main phase, someone loses half their life, then you go to your end step and choose feed and make that same person lose life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn. So you just kill someone. Like, add those two together, and it's essentially 6 mana, kill an opponent, Blood Tribute. Really hilarious because its kicker is tap and untap vampire, and Astarion happens to be a vampire, so it kind of built to combo together. And then there's also other ways of doing this. Scourge of the Skyclaves, Even Blade Reaper, Raving Dead can also half your opponent's life total in one turn, which is what you need with Astarion to win the game. So I think that is maybe the direction most people will go, try to turn this into a one-shot kill combo commander, although it's perfectly fine as just a sweet Orzhov life gain or Sanguine Bond style combo commander as well. We also got Baba Lasagna Night Witch, a new 3-mana 3/3 human warlock that says sack up to 3 permanents. If there were 3 or more card types among the sacrifice permanents, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life and you draw 3 cards. So Baba Lasagna, kind of an interesting design. It's a sacrifice commander that cares specifically about permanent types on the battlefield. And as far as Baba's concerned, this is going to be lands, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, and planeswalkers. I believe those are the only 5 that matter. So if you want Baba to do something, you need to sacrifice 3 of those, land, artifact, enchantment, or artifact, enchantment, creature, planeswalker, creature, land, whatever combination of those. Otherwise, you can still use it just to sacrifice stuff, but you're not going to drain, you're not going to draw the cards. So I think that Baba is kind of a deck building challenge style of commander. How can we have 3 permanents of different types to sacrifice every single turn? One option is tokens, like Tireless Tracker and Tireless Provisioner. They make artifact tokens, clues, and treasures, and then then maybe Scoot Swarm can make creature tokens, so you can be sacrificing those along with a land or something, let's say, to be getting a draw 3 every single turn. There's also some cards that can kinda almost get you all the types together, like Blinkmoth Nexus, for example. You activate it, it's going to be a land artifact creature. That's 3 types right there. And remember, Baba says sack up to 3 target permanents, so you can sack just Blinkmoth Nexus and draw 3 cards. Also, Urza Saga almost gets there. It's an enchantment land that can make an artifact token and tutor up an artifact. So Urza Saga by itself can get there. Dryad Arbor is a creature land, so it's 2 of the 3 types. If you can add the whatever Tireless Tracker in the mix to get the artifact, you can sack that. And then if you throw Ramanap Excavator, Crucible of Worlds, ways to get these lands back, you can kind of do this every single turn. And when Baba Lasagna's tapping to draw 3 every single turn and you're only losing 1 permanent, that's actually a really powerful source of card advantage. And then you just throw in whatever sacrifice synergies you want, Dictate to Erebos, Blood Artist, anything like that to take advantage of the fact you're sacrificing. I don't think Baba's like super powerful. It does take a lot of deck building work to actually have the permanent types and make it work. But if you can build a deck to support it, tap to draw 3 on a 3-mana commander, that's a lot of card advantage. So I think it's worth keeping in mind and seems fun to build at least. We also got Gorion Wise Mentor, 3-mana 3/4 human wizard with vigilance, legendary creature of course, says when you cast an adventure spell, you may copy it, and you may choose new targets for your copy. And this one's pretty simple. If you want to play Bant Adventures, Gorion's your guy. That's going to be the perfect commander. It is literally Lucky Clover from the command zone. Lucky Clover, one of the best cards in an adventure deck. So jam all your adventure cards together, cast them, double them up, generate value, win the game. And we also know that we're getting a bunch of new adventures. We've only seen a couple so far, like Illithid Harvester. So there's going to be even more support for the adventure commander. So if you want to play adventures and you want to be in Bat, Gorion's the way to go. We also got Mazzy Truesword Paladin, a pretty neat aura commander, a 4-mana Naya Halfling Knight. It's a 3/4. It says whenever an enchanted creature attacks one of your opponents, it gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. And then whenever an aura you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, until the end of your next turn, you may cast that card. So Mazzy, one of the interesting parts about this is it doesn't say a creature you control. It's whenever any enchanted creature attacks one of your opponents, it's going to get that plus ability. So you can put your enchantments on your opponent's creatures, kind of like Kama from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, one of the first commanders we've seen that cared about this, putting auras on your opponent's stuff, and Mazzy will still be able to pump them and help gain a bunch of damage as they attack your opponents. So I think that's one direction, try to enchant your opponent's stuff. The last ability kind of just turns all your auras into rankers. You only get 1 turn to recast them, but you're getting all your auras back, so it's nice protection. If your big Voltron threat dies, you're gonna have a chance to get your auras back anyway, which kind of makes it like a Euro style deck. I don't think it's as busted or nearly as devastating, but you're not going to be the arch enemy when you play Mazzy the way you are when you play Euro. But if you want to play a Naya Oro style deck, this seems like a fun way to play it that isn't going to be hated at the table and disliked to the extent that Euro is, but still be pretty powerful and have some shenanigans if you want to try to put your auras on your opponent's cards. We also got Raphael, Fiendish Savior, a new Devil Noble legend, a 5-mana Rakdos 4/4 with flying, says other demons, devils, imps, and tieflings you control get +1/+1 and have lifelink. And then at the beginning of each end step, if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So Raphael's interesting because of the tribes it supports. We've never really had an imp commander. I guess technically Blim is a legendary imp, but it definitely doesn't care about the tribe at all. So if you want to play Jank Tribal and play your crazed Skurgs and Fire Imps and Chaos Imps, Raphael actually gives you an on-theme commander, and the same is mostly true of Devils. Like Devils, we got Zergoth from a Jumpstart set, but it's only mono red, and Devils are kind of a Rakdos tribe. So Raphael gives us a new leader there as well. So I love that it supports these tribes that really need more support. The other part of this card that I think is really powerful is a lifelink. Rakdos, not the best color combination for lifelink. Black does have some, red doesn't really get lifelink at all. So this is a really interesting option to play in the 99 of like Demon Tribal, Rakdos deck, like Rakdos the Showstopper, where this is going to come down, pump your team, and then when you get an attack, you're going to gain a huge amount of life from your huge demons. And one of the things I like to do, and pretty much every commander deck I build, is try to just have like 1 or 2 incidental life gain cards, because I hate being the person that ends up low on life. You're down like under 10, everyone else is still at 30 or 40, and you're just kind of like struggling and scraping to survive. And you know, if people want to kill me, they can. All I got to do is attack me, and this game is going to be over for me. So having 1 or 2 cards that can gain a bunch of life and get you out of that hole, I think is really essential to many commander decks, and Raphael is a great option for that in a Demon Tribal deck or for any of the other tribes it supports. And then, I mean, you can build around it, having ways to discard cards, cycle cards, for example, kind of like Sephiroth, to be able to try to make a devil every turn. The devil's fine. If you're making one every turn, it's even better. But I don't think that's really super necessary to make Raphael good. It's good enough in the right tribal deck, just as a lord that gives all your stuff lifelink. We also got Dynaheir Invoker Adept, a 4-mana Jeskai 4/4 human wizard with haste that says you may activate abilities of other creatures you control as though they had haste, and then you can tap it for whenever you next activate an ability this turn by spending 4 more mana to activate it. Copy that ability, and you can choose new targets for the copy. So kind of like a Panharmonicon for expensive activated abilities mixed with 1,000-year elixir on a stick in your command zone. So down here, pretty interesting. There's some powerful abilities that cost 4 more mana if you want to build around it, like Quicksilver Amulet. With Dynaheir out, you can put 2 creatures into play. Your Tower of Calamities snipes 2 things. Memnarch can steal 2 artifacts. I'm sure there's some high alert combos. High alert 4 mana untap a creature if you can do it twice, and that creature is tapping to make a bunch of mana. You can probably make infinite mana if you stack your triggers properly. So it is kind of a neat, weird way to build a Panharmonicon style deck. Also works really well with things that reduce the cost on abilities. If you're playing this, you're probably gonna have a lot of abilities in your deck, and some of these, like Tower Calamities, 8 mana is just a ton. But if you use something like Zerta to get the cost down, or Training Grounds to get the cost of these activated abilities down on your creatures, then it becomes a lot easier to pull off some of these shenanigans. So Dynaheir, definitely a unique build around in the command zone. Also seems good with commanders that have expensive activated abilities. I think Sisay is the first one that comes to mind. Being able to double search up legends every time you activate it seems pretty good. So Dynaheir, good in the 99 of Sun decks, also a sweet commander. Oh yeah, there's also some controversy with Dynaheir and how it's going to work with stuff like Cascading Cataracts. So it doesn't include mana abilities, but mana abilities don't use the stack, so no one really knows how this is going to play out. If you're a judge and you got some ideas, definitely let me know in the comments. But if you read Dynaheir, at a glance it seems like you should be able to tap it and then spend 5 mana to activate Cascading Cataracts, and then make double the mana, so make 10 mana, which would actually make this a pretty absurd ramp spell in a Dynaheir deck. The question is, does Dynaheir actually work with mana abilities? We've never really had a card like this before. This is a brand new thing that we've never seen in the entire history of Magic. Some people say no because it's a mana ability, and mana abilities don't use the stack. Other people say yes, because Dynaheir isn't worded in a way that obviously excludes it from working with mana abilities. So it'll be interesting to see once we get the official rules, if this intentionally works with mana abilities, if it even works with mana abilities at all, or if Wizards overlook this. So keep that in mind. Like, if it works with Cascading Cataracts, it's going to be a staple in a Dynaheir deck. We also got Bhaal, Lord of Murder, our second god from the set. 5 mana Jun 4/4 legendary god. Same ability where as long as your life total is half or equal to half of your starting life total, it has indestructible. So in Commander, 20 or less life, it's indestructible. And that says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and goad it. So Bhaal, honestly, not nearly as interesting to me as the Abzan one. The Abzan one is still, Myrkul is like my favorite card from the set so far. But there is combo potential, similar to Yawgmoth Thran Physician actually, where if you can get 2 undying creatures, you can sack one, putting a counter on the other one, sack that one, putting a counter on the first one, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And if you have like Murderous Redcap as one of your undying creatures, you just burn the table out of the game. So I think that's probably the way to build around it. Otherwise, I don't know. I guess you do some goading and goad some stuff as stuff dies. But other than the combo, Bhaal's actually a little bit meh to me. We also got 4 face commanders from the Commander Legends Commander Precon decks. That's right, it's a commander set that also has a bunch of commander precons, so it's kind of 2 commander sets in one. So we're not going to go super in-depth on these face cards. We're going to get full previews for these decks at the end of spoiler season, but I did want to mention them. We got Captain Narthrod from the Dynaheir deck, a 5-mana 3/6 horror pirate. Says horrors you control have menace. When a horror you control steals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. And the beginning of your end step, choose target artifact or creature card from an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn, and you may put it on the battlefield under your control. So if you want to play horrors, seems like an absurd commander. It does exactly what Horrors wants. Horrors are all about milling. They're also really big, like Nemesis of Reason, Consuming Aberration, Sewer Nemesis can get absolutely massive. So you play these huge Horrors. Then you play Captain, and then you attack, and they have Menace, so they're going to be hard to block. And then you mill your opponent for a ton of cards, and then you just for free steal the best artifact or creature from your opponent's graveyard. So even though this is a precon card, this commander seems really pushed. Of course, it's dealing with the Horror tribe, which is not a super push tribe, but even with that in mind, I think Captain Narthrod is a really strong build around. We also got Faldorn Dread Wolf Herald, a 3-mana 3/3 Gruul human druid. This says, whenever you cast a spell from exile, or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, make a 2/2 green wolf creature token, and then you pay 1, discard a card, exile the top card of your library, you can play it this turn. This is wolfy fixed version of Prosper in the Gruul colors, essentially. Cares about the same stuff, playing stuff from exile. I think it's much less powerful than Prosper, but still, I mean, Red's got a lot of ways to get things in exile, a lot of their impulse card draw, so it's easy to support in Red, and you can build a pretty big board full of wolves if you can kind of storm off and sling spells from exile. We also got Firkraag Cunning Instigator, a new Izzet Dragon, a 5-mana 3/3 with Flying and Haste. It says, whenever one or more dragons you control attack an opponent, go target creature that player controls. And then whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, if that creature had to attack this combat, put a +1/+1 counter on Firkraag and draw a card. So essentially, Izzet Dragon / Goad commander wants you to force your opponent to attack, either by attacking with dragons and forcing your opponent to go that way, or casting actual gold cards like Disrupting Decorum or whatever, because then you're going to be rewarded for drawing a ton of cards, and the more creatures you can goad that have to attack, the more cards you're going to draw. The way that last ability is worded, you're going to draw a card for each goaded creature that has to attack, which means if you can use Disrupting Decorum or whatever to goad the entire board, this can easily be refilling your entire hand, which is really nice. We also got Nilal de Eneris, a 3-mana 3/3 Orzhov human rogue that says you can look at the top card of your library at any time. You can cast Cleric, Rogue, and Warrior and Wizard spells from the top of your library, and the beginning combat on your turn, if you have a full party, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. So this is a party commander, and I really like that Wizards is giving us a party commander, although I really think this card should have been Esper. If you look at the party payoffs we already have, they're mostly in blue and white, rather than white and black, so not having any blue in its mana cost means you're not going to be able to play Linval, you're not going to be able to play Nimble Trapfinder, and you're really kind of pinched on party stuff. There are some fine black cards, but really outside of Coveted Prize, there's not a lot there, so I like that we're getting a party commander. Don't like that it's just Orzhov rather than Esper, because Esper would cover all the good party colors. We also got another interesting adventure card in Monster Manual. So one side is Zoological Study, a 3-mana sorcery. It says mill 5 cards, then return a creature card milled this way to your hand. Kind of meh. The other side, though, pretty impressive. 4 mana, and then you can pay 1 and a green and tap it, and put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So this is essentially a green Quicksilver Amulet, a Elvish Piper that's an artifact rather than a creature. If you want to cheat something big into play, this is a really nice way to do it, and then you get a little bit of digging with the Zoological Study if you have the time to go on an adventure before you cast the artifact side. So if you're playing Mael, Karthus, Xenagos, decks that are built around really huge expensive creatures, I think that Monster Manual is a pretty good option. I would say it's better than Quicksilver Amulet for sure, if you are in green. If you're not in green, well, then you're kind of out of luck, and you have to play Quicksilver Amulet. And it's probably better than Elvish Piper too, because an artifact I think is a bit harder to kill than a creature. So nice option for cheating big creatures into play decks. Of course, we also have some non-legendary cards in the set, like White Plume Adventurer. So White Plume Adventurer, 3-mana 3/3 Orc Cleric, says when White Plume Adventurer enters a battlefield, you take the initiative, and then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, untap a creature you control. If you've completed a dungeon, untap all creatures you control instead. So initiative is a new weird twist on dungeon, and not really sure why Wizards did it this way. So initiative means something very specific. It means venture into a new dungeon Wizards created called the Undercity. You can't use White Plum Adventure to start Dungeon of the Mad Mage or any of the dungeons from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It only ventures into the Undercity. The Undercity actually a pretty strong dungeon though. First mode's gonna search for lands, and then you get scrying and card draw. The last mode's kind of absurd. Reveal the top 10 cards of your library, put a creature from among them on the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it, and it gains hexproof until your next turn. So that's like a 7-mana spell, and you get all that value along the way. So it's a little bit awkward that White Plum Adventure doesn't directly work with the old dungeons, and it also means that the old venture cards don't directly work with Undercity, like Triumphant Adventure. When you hit your opponent and venture into a dungeon, you can't choose to venture into Undercity. You can only venture into the old dungeons. However, it gets a little better once you get into a dungeon. So let's say you play White Plum Adventure and venture into the Undercity, or take the initiative rather into the Undercity. Then you hit your opponent with Triumphant Adventure. Well, you're already in Undercity. You can only have one dungeon at once, so you'll be able to venture through Undercity. And the same in the other direction. If you start Dungeon of the Mad Mage, let's say, with Triumphant Adventure, and then you play White Plum Adventure, you can take the initiative to move to the next room of your Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So, a little bit weird. Not exactly sure why Wizards didn't just make it venture in normal dungeons, and they made this one random dungeon that it works with a whole different mechanic. I don't know. I feel like I spent 5 minutes explaining this mechanic for no reason when it could have just said venture, and Undercity could have just been a dungeon. But I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it'd be overpowered if they did it that way. But it's cool to see more support for the dungeon mechanic, even if it somehow managed to make the mechanic even more parasitic. So I think White Plum Adventure, it's good for venture style decks. If you're playing Sephiroth or Nader or whatever, this is a good inclusion. It gives you a new dungeon that you can gain access to, and worst case, it takes and just ventures through the dungeon that you're in, and untapping your stuff can be pretty strong. We've seen that with Prophet of Krufix. Now, man, sure, this only hits on creatures, but still, like, that's a nice bit of value. And if you ever manage to complete a dungeon, untapping all your creatures on your opponent's turn, really, really strong. We also got, maybe my favorite card of the day, Baldur's Gate. One of those cards, you ever watch those movies or TV shows where after like 5 seasons, they take and say the name of the TV show in the episode, and the character's like, and does a big wink, and you're like, come on. I feel like that card is this. It's Baldur's Gate in Baldur's Gate. Well done, wink, wink. However, the card itself, really strong. It's a gate, it taps in a colorless mana. It comes into play untapped, which is huge for gates, and you can pay 2 and tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of gates you control. This is Cabal Coffers for gates. Wizards also confirmed we're getting 9 more new gates, which will bring the total number of gates in Magic, I believe, to 21. I think we had 10 plus 1 random one, and now 10 new ones, which is a huge, huge deal because gates really, really powerful. Maze's End, really sweet card, great win condition. Gates are also super budget friendly. I love seeing them get support for that reason as well, because they force you to play these super, super cheap tap lands, because that's what gates are. So you don't have to play the fetch lands. You don't want to play the fetch lands. It's actually suboptimal to play a ton of fetch lands in your gate deck because you don't have enough room for gates. So I love seeing Wizards support this mechanic, and Baldur's Gate itself, it is a reason to play gates. It is a reward for playing gates. If you're playing decks that have a bunch of gates because you're on a budget, this just really powers them up. Cabal Coffers one of the strongest lands in the Commander format, and in some ways this is even better. It makes mana by itself. So in the early game, it's not a dead card like Cabal Coffers. So we don't have the combo piece. We don't have an Urborg to turn all of our lands into gates, but still, I am super hyped to see how good gates will get now that we're getting new payoffs. If you're interested in the archetype, probably try to get your Maze's End soon, because I got a feeling that these lands are going to go up in price, as a lot of players are probably going to add them to their decks with this new gate support from Baldur's Gate. We also got Jaheira's Respite, a interesting ramp frog hybrid 4-mana instant, says search your library for up to X basic lands, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Put those cards on the battlefield tapped and shuffle, and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. So this is a fog mixed with a pseudo-explosive vegetation, and I gotta say, even though I think fogs are underrated in Commander and we should probably play them more, I think that this card's probably not that good. 5 mana is just a lot. And the ramp mode's going to be inconsistent, because remember, this only triggers on creatures attacking you. So there's a risk here you're going to pass with 5 mana up, hoping to do a bunch of ramping with Jaheira's Respite, and your opponents are going to attack someone else with most of their creatures or all their creatures, and then you passed with 5 mana up and did nothing, got no value from that mana. So I would say, if you want to play this card, go for it. It can be powerful in its best case scenario, but just don't drop like a Rampant Growth or something for it. Don't count this as one of your ramp spells. Count this as a removal spell, as a fog with upside or something, but don't take away your early game ramp to play this, or you're going to end up really, really disappointed. So a fine card, an interesting design, a card that has a really high ceiling. There's going to be times when you cast this and don't die as a result because of the damage prevention and ramp literally every basic land out of your deck, and it's going to be absurd. But there's also going to be times when you pass the turn with 5 mana up and no one attacks you, and you cry a little bit and then go back to your turn or feeling pretty sad. So don't replace a ramp spell for it, but if you want to play it for fun, fogs I think are better than they look in Commander. We also got a new Mythic Angel in Battle Angels of Tyre, a 4-mana 4/4 with flying in Myriad. If you don't know Myriad, when you attack with a Myriad creature, you get a copy for each other opponent. So essentially you send this at one opponent, you'll get 2 more in a 4-player game to attack the other opponents. And then it says, when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that player had more cards in hand than each other player, create a treasure if that player controls more lands than each other player, and gain 3 life if that player had more life than each other player. So assuming you're not in the lead, and you get in with each of the angels, because you're going to Myriad, so you're going to be hitting each opponent, as long as your opponent doesn't have blockers or removal, you're going to get all 3 of those. You're going to draw a card, make a treasure, gain 3 life, and potentially do that every single turn. So Battle Angels of Tyre, I like this card quite a bit. A 4-mana 4/4 with flying and upside and Myriad and all these combat damage triggers seems pretty good. I don't know if I just play it in a generic deck though, but I would certainly consider this in a deck that cares about its creature types, like Angel Tribals. If you're playing Giada or Elira, or you're playing maybe Knights, it's also a Knight for some reason, Sir Gwyn or Ariel, then I think Battle Angels of Tyre is actually really, really good in either of those tribal decks, and it's probably fine to try in just a generic deck. My guess is it probably won't quite be good enough. Maybe if you have token doubling synergies or something like that to take advantage of the Myriad, that could be another path, but definitely an interesting new mythic that has a lot of potential in the right deck. We also got a new equipment in Robe of the Archmagi, a 3-mana equipment that says when an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw that many cards, equip for 4, or equip to a Shaman, Warlock, or Wizard for 1. So Robe of the Archmagi, I mean, if you put this on a big evasive creature and get in with it, it's a ton of card draw. It's essentially Cold Eye Selkie on an equipment. The only downside is equip 4. Oh, that's a lot. If you're equipping this to non-Shaman, Warlock, or Wizards, I think the equip cost is just way too high. It's going to be too easy to get blown out. I do think if you can equip this for free somehow, and you also have evasive things to equip it to, it's going to be really powerful. Like Gale can equip it for free. Maybe you get it on a Daxos or a Luzon, and you're going to be able to pump it a little bit and get in and just draw so many cards. So it's a huge source of card advantage in the right deck. The other way to do it is just play it with the tribes where you can equip for 1. When you're equipping this for 1, maybe to Kumana or a Maloku or a Leia, then this is super efficient. Like 3 to cast 1 to equip, that's a really, really strong equipment. So keep it in mind for Shaman, Warlock, Wizards. Keep it in mind for equipment decks that can cheat equipment onto creatures. If you're playing like Hammer Time style decks where you have free equips going on, then this goes up even more in value. Might be worth considering in just like evasive decks, flyer tribal decks, but again, if you gotta equip it for 4, gonna be a little bit risky. So a card that's really powerful, although I think a little bit narrow. However, there's one other trick here that I wanted to mention just because it's funny. Also works really well with Assault Suit. Assault Suit's this weird equipment where essentially you get a creature and then each opponent during their turn is gonna get that creature and they're gonna have to attack with it. Well, Robe of the Archmagi, the way it's worded, it doesn't doesn't give the creature the card draw ability, it still has that ability. So if you get a creature with Assault Strew and Robe of the Archmagi, as that creature goes around into the table and attacks, you're going to be the one that's going to draw the cards, even if your opponent controls the creature that's attacking because of Assault Strew. So you could potentially be getting in 4 hits every turn cycle with a Robe of the Archmagi and just drawing an absurd amount of cards. So is this like a super competitive thing? Probably not, but it does sound hilarious. That's one of my goals from this set. Get an Assault Suit creature with Robe on it and just draw all the cards. So Robe of the Archmagi, if you can cheat on the equip cost and you don't gotta pay 4, it's really good. If you gotta pay 4, it's a little bit sketchy. Also cool with Assault Strobe. We also got a new mythic in Nautiloid Ship, a 4 mana 5/5 flying vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. Gotta say, I love this incidental graveyard hate. Commander players don't play enough graveyard hate. Sticking it on good cards like Nautiloid Ship is a way to get players to actually play it, which we should be doing more of anyway. And then when it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card exiled with Nautiloid Ship onto the battlefield under your control. So kind of reanimation with extra steps almost. So Nautiloid Ship, I think obvious home for this, gonna be decks that care about vehicles. Depala, Greasefang, Cherokee, Kitori, any vehicle matter deck. I think this is essentially just an auto-include. One of the better vehicles in the deck. Gonna be a reanimating, gonna give you kind of a hate card on a vehicle, which is also really nice. On the other hand, I think this could also just be good in self-mill decks. Remember, this doesn't say target opponent's graveyard, just target player's graveyard. So you can use this to exile your own graveyard, and you have control of your graveyard. If you're playing Madrolthur, Sidisi, or Lae'zel, you're trying to fill your graveyard. You're going to have entombs. You're going to have all these ways to get creatures in your graveyard. You're going to have big creatures you want to get back. And then Nautiloid Ship is going to wipe them all away. Sure, a little bit awkward. But then if it hits your opponent, it's going to let you start putting those creatures into play repeatedly. You can hit your opponent, put a creature into play next turn, do it again, do it again, do it again. So this can actually be several reanimation spells in one in the right deck. So I like that idea as well. Also, probably really good in Karn Silver Golem, where you can just turn this on for 1 mana. Plus, you're a colorless deck, so you don't have that many options available compared to multicolor decks, so keep it in mind there as well. We also got a new instant in Elminster's Simulacrum. 6 mana instant. For each opponent, you create a token that's a copy of up to 1 target creature that player controls. This feels like the Fixtus Blatant Thievery. How Magic has changed. In the old days, for 7 mana, you just straight up yoinked a permanent from each player. Now for 6 mana, you get to make a token copy of each player's creature. That doesn't mean Elminster's Simulacrum is bad. Blatant Thievery, if anything, is pretty overpowered and kind of unfun. Elminster's Simulacrum, though, it's a pretty sweet card. You get to do it at instant speed. You get to essentially get a copy of each opponent's best creature. You'll get their ETB triggers. You can maybe blow your opponent out in combat. So this could be worth considering in just a generic deck where you're just going to get copies of your opponent's best stuff. Definitely gets even more valuable if you have token synergies. Adrix and Nev, for example, where you're going to be able to double up those tokens. If you're getting 2 copies of each of your opponent's best creatures, 6 total creatures for 6 mana instant speed, then this card is like borderline busted closing out the game. So even though it looks a little tame compared to Blatant Thievery, when you consider that you're getting 3 creatures, your opponent's best creatures for 6 mana, that's only 2 mana per creature. Elminster Simulacrum still seems like a really good deal, and even better if you have token synergies. Finally today, in the world of reprints and lower rarity cards, the diamond's coming back. We get this sweet AFR book treatment. Those are actually looking pretty good. The normal diamonds, whatever. We've got a bunch of those now. They're not very expensive, but excited for the new treatment on them. We also got Arcane Signet, Command Tower, Wayfarer's Bauble, Swiftfoot Boots. Those come back in a lot of commander decks. In Bramble Sovereign, pretty valuable reprint. I didn't realize how expensive this card got, but it's up to like $20. Big Bramble Sovereign fan. Really fun in Panharmonicon style decks, token decks, giving you extra copies of your creatures for just 2 mana, and a pretty solid reprint considering how much it costs these days. Finally, there's about 1 million uncommon commanders. In series, those videos already super long. There's no way we can go over all of them. Although shout out to Lulu Loyal Hollyvant, which is just one of the funniest Magic cards we've ever seen. I don't even think it's that powerful, but it's an elephant angel and its name is Lulu. What could be better than that? And if you want to see all these and sort them in filter them. You can find them all over at mtgpreviews.com. And now we got a bunch of draft chaff. Remember, the set is draftable. Most of these cards I don't think are going to show up in your typical commander deck, but if you do some Commander Legends 2 Battle for Baldur Gate drafting, these are going to be important cards for your draft deck. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers for today. It's been a long one, so many cards. Let me know what you think. What are you most hyped for? What do you think of this set so far? What do you think of this flavor? What did I mess up? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back tomorrow with some more Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.